first time I noticed the button, I assumed somebody had swapped out the wrong elevator panel. That's a real thing that happens. Elevator companies recondition cars, panels get mixed up between buildings, and you end up with a button for a floor that doesn't exist in your building. So when I saw it sitting there below the lobby button in car 3, a little round button with no number on it, just blank, I didn't think much. I thought somebody at the elevator company is going to get a phone call Monday. That's all. That's where my head was. I want you to understand that because I need you to know I'm not a man who goes looking for this stuff. I'll tell it the way it happened. I've written most of it down already in the incident log and then in a notebook of my own when the incident log stopped being a place I could put the truth. I worked as the night building engineer at a new office tower in the suburbs north of Dallas, one of those master-planned business districts that went up fast over the last few years, all glass and steel and structured parking, where 10 years ago there was nothing but a strip center and a field. The tower's 18 stories, brand new, the kind of building that still smells like new carpet and drywall and the faint chemical sweetness of fresh sealant on the lobby floor. Corporate tenants, a couple of tech companies, a regional bank, a big insurance operation that took 4 floors, badge gates in the lobby, a security desk staffed at night, a tenant directory screen, the works. I ran the building systems on the overnight, the HVAC, the fire control panel, the mechanical rooms coordinated with the cleaning crews and the elevator service company, handled anything that broke after hours. I liked it. After the life I'd had, I liked a clean, quiet building with systems that mostly behaved. I should say why I was there, on nights, alone, because it matters later. I'd had a bad few years, divorce, and before that some medical bills that ate everything, and I was rebuilding, paying down what I owed, and a night engineer job with good benefits and not much drama was exactly what I needed. So when things started going wrong in that building, I had every reason in the world to keep my head down and keep my job. And that's most of why I didn't say anything for as long as I didn't. I want to be honest about that. Fear of losing the paycheck kept me quiet a lot longer than it should have. The building had no basement. I knew that the way you know the building you work in. There were 4 elevators in the main bank, plus a service elevator, and they ran from the lobby up to 18. The parking was in an attached structure above grade. You drove up ramps. There was no underground parking. The lowest point in the whole building was the lobby and the mechanical and electrical rooms off the back of it, all at grade. The fire control panel, the elevator inspection certificates. The building plans I had copies of in the engineering office, all of it said the same thing. Ground floor was the bottom. There was nothing below. The button appeared on a Friday. I came on at 6, did my walk, and around 9 I rode car 3 up to check an HVAC complaint on 12, and when I got in I saw it. Below the L for lobby, where there's normally just blank panel, there was a button. Round. Same style as the others, but blank. No number, no letter, no braille beside it like the others had. Just a smooth blank button, set into the panel like it belonged there, like it had always been there. I pressed it. Out of reflex, the way you do, nothing happened. The car just sat there until I pressed 12, and then it went up to 12 like normal. I figured, like I said, wrong panel. I wrote it in the log, noted car 3 had an unlabeled button below lobby, recommended elevator service inspect, and I went on with my night. Monday I called the elevator company. The account guy pulled up our building and he was confused, then a little annoyed, then confused again. He said they hadn't done any work on our cars, no panel swaps, no service tickets, nothing since the original installation and the state inspection. He said there shouldn't be any button below lobby because there's no floor below lobby. The controller wasn't even programmed for a stop below lobby. It physically couldn't go there. I told him there was a button. He said, send a picture. I sent a picture. He went quiet on the phone for a second, and then he said he'd send a tech out. And the tech who came, a younger guy, looked at car 3, looked at the panel, ran his meter on it, pulled the car out of service and opened the panel up behind it, and I watched his face change. He said the button wasn't wired to anything. It wasn't connected to the controller. There was a button in the panel that went nowhere, that nobody installed, that wasn't in any of his records. And behind it the wiring was just the normal blank position filler. The button was sitting on top of a panel that had no provision for it. He couldn't explain it. He took the button out, physically removed it, capped the hole, put the car back in service, closed his ticket as unauthorized component removed, and left. The button was back the next morning. Same car, same spot, blank. That's when the back of my neck started to bother me, because a button doesn't reinstall itself. And I'd watched the man take it out. I did the next reasonable thing, which was pull the camera footage. We had cameras in all the elevators, fixed in the corner, and they fed to the camera room behind the security desk, recording on a loop of about 30 days. I pulled car 3 for the overnight hours, fast forwarding, looking for anybody messing with the panel, and I found something I wasn't looking for. At 3:11 in the morning, car 3, empty, no badge swipe, no call recorded. The doors closed on the lobby and the car descended. The floor indicator in the corner of the footage, which normally reads L at the bottom, went past L. It showed a character I can't really describe, not a number, not a letter, a shape, blocky like the segmented display, trying to make a symbol it didn't have segments for, flickering, and the car was descending. You could see it in the footage, the slight motion, the way the light shifts in an elevator that's moving. It went down below the lobby for about 40 seconds, and then the footage corrupted, not cut out, corrupted. The image tearing into colored blocks and scan lines, audio going to a low hum for the duration, and then it cleared and the car was rising again, and the indicator came back up through that flickering symbol to L, and the doors opened on the empty lobby, and the car sat there like nothing had happened. I watched that footage probably 10 times. There's no floor below the lobby. The car went down for 40 seconds. At elevator speed, 40 seconds down is a long way. Several stories. Into ground that, according to every plan I had, was just dirt and the building's foundation. I want to tell you about the people now, because the building started taking them, and that's the part I can't make peace with. There was a guy on the insurance floors, worked late constantly, one of those people who's always the last badge out, who I'd see sometimes when I did my rounds, a tired man about my age named, I'll call him Petrie. He was the kind of employee corporate America runs on and forgets. The guy who stays till midnight to hit a deadline that gets him a thank you email and another deadline. I knew his name because his badge was always the last after-hours entry on the insurance floors, and I'd nod to him in the elevator lobby on 14 when our paths crossed. One night, Petrie's badge logged out of 14 at 11:40 and never badged through the lobby gates to leave the building. I know because I review the after-hours logs. It's part of the job, accounting for who's still in the building for fire safety. He went down in the elevator from 14 and he never came out the lobby. His car was still in the structure the next morning, and he showed up to work the next day like normal, badged in at the usual time. And when I saw him in the lobby, I almost said something and didn't because, what do you say? But he was wrong. Quiet in a way he hadn't been. And when I checked the logs more carefully, I saw that his badge the night before had registered one entry I'd never seen before. The badge readers logged the floor. His last entry that night wasn't 14, and it wasn't lobby. It was a floor code I didn't recognize that wasn't in the building's floor list, a code that the system rendered as B1, B1. There was no B1 in our building. There was no B anything. But his badge had opened something labeled B1 at 11:52, the night he didn't come out. And he'd come back the next day, a quieter, grayer version of himself, and a week later the same thing. His badge going to B1 in the night, and after that one he didn't come back at all, didn't show up to work. And here's the thing that turned my stomach. Nobody noticed for almost 2 weeks. His company didn't flag it. His badge kept showing him present, kept logging entries, normal hours, in and out every day, even though I never once saw him again and his car never moved from the structure. The building kept counting him as present. It was payroll eventually that flagged something, some discrepancy, and HR started asking, and by then his car had been ticketed and towed, and a man had been gone for 2 weeks, and the only thing that knew it was the parking enforcement and me. I started keeping my own notebook then because I couldn't put any of this in the official log without it getting kicked up to property management, and property management, in the form of a woman I'll call Ms. Reyes, had already made it clear she did not want problems. When I brought her the camera footage of car 3 descending, she'd watched about 10 seconds of it and told me the camera system had known glitches, that the indicator overlay was unreliable, that I should put in a ticket with the camera vendor and stop pulling footage I wasn't asked to pull. She wasn't evil. I want to be fair to her. She was a property manager on a brand new flagship building with a developer breathing down her neck and tenants paying premium rent. And the last thing on earth she could afford was a story about an elevator going to a basement that wasn't supposed to exist. She was scared, but she was scared of lawsuits and vacancy, not of the building. She hadn't seen what I'd seen. She didn't ride the building at 3 in the morning. The building engineer who'd had the job before me, the date guy who trained me, a guy named Hollis, who'd been there since the building opened, he'd seen it. I went to him. He was older, close to retiring, and when I described the button and the descent in Petrie, he didn't argue and he didn't look surprised. He just got very tired looking, and he told me what he knew, which wasn't a full explanation, just pieces. He told me about the site, what was there before. And this is the grounded part, the part you can almost touch. Before the business district, before any of it, the land had held a big regional record storage and document processing facility. One of those operations from the 70s and 80s where a company warehouses all its paper, decades of files, and has workers who process and microfilm and store and retrieve it. A windowless concrete building, much of it below grade for fire protection and climate control, big underground vaults full of paper. And there'd been a fire. A bad one in the lower levels in the vaults where the paper was. Hollis said several workers had died down there, processing clerks, the kind of low-wage back-office people nobody downtown ever thought about, trapped in the underground vaults when the fire took the stairwells. The facility closed after that. The building got demolished. And the lower levels, the burned-out vaults, instead of being fully excavated and hauled away, which cost a fortune, had been, Hollis believed, just capped. Filled, sealed, built over. The developer of the new tower had bought the land cheap, and the cheapest way to deal with an old buried concrete structure is to leave it down there and put your foundation on top of it. They built it over them, Hollis said. The people who burned, they never got them all out and they never dug them out. They just poured the new building on top. And the building knows it's there. Buildings are just systems, son, and that system down there never got shut off. It's still processing, still storing, still counting people in and out and filing them away. It's just doing it to us now. He told me he'd seen the button appear and disappear for 2 years. He told me he'd never ridden it down and never would. And that the trick to surviving the job was to never let your badge near that button, never get curious, never stay so late and so alone that the building started to think of you as inventory instead of staff. And then he retired gratefully and left me alone in the building at night with the thing under it, because that's what I'd figured out by then, watching the logs. The building took the overlooked ones, the Petries, the people who stayed late because they were afraid of losing their jobs, the back office workers, the ones whose absence nobody would notice fast because the company already barely noticed their presence. The building counted them as present even after they were gone. The way that old facility must have kept its clerks on the roster, the way corporate systems keep people as badge numbers and access logs long after the person is anything but a number. It fed on the kind of person a company erases while they're still alive. The replaceable, the staying late, the ones reduced to an entry in a system. And it filed them away below in the vaults, the way it had always filed paper. I knew eventually it had noticed me. The signs were small. My badge, which had always logged me normally, started showing an odd entry now and then, B1. At times I knew I'd been up in the mechanical rooms. The car 3 button when I rode in that car was colder than the others when I let my hand pass over it. A real cold. The cold of deep ground, of concrete that never sees the sun. And then one night I pulled up the tenant directory on the lobby screen to check something, and I scrolled, and there was a listing that hadn't been there, a new line at the bottom below the 18th floor tenants. It read, Lower Tenant Storage, B1, and beside it in the contact field was my name. My name listed as the contact for a floor that didn't exist. The building had started to file me. I was becoming staff for the level below, inventory with a badge. The last night was Petrie, in a way. Or it was the next Petrie. There was a young woman who'd started on the insurance floors, early career, eager, the kind who stays latest of all because she's new and scared and trying to prove herself. And I'd watched her badge creep later and later in the logs over a few weeks, 11:30, midnight. And I'd watched, with a sick feeling, her last entry one night render as B1. And she came back the next day quiet. And I knew the pattern. I knew she had maybe one more trip in her before she didn't come back. Before her car sat in the structure for 2 weeks while the building counted her present, and I made a decision that I still don't know was right. I decided I wasn't going to let the building have her without somebody at least knowing, at least trying. I'm not a hero. I told you why I stayed in the job, the debt, the rebuilding, the need for things to be quiet. But I'd already lost a marriage to keeping my head down and not fighting for things. And I'd watched Petrie vanish into a system and nobody blink. And I couldn't be one more part of the machine that filed people away. So that night, after she'd gone home, still herself, still present, I went to car 3 after closing when the building was empty and the lobby was dark except for the directory screen glowing with my name on B1. And I got in, and the button was there, blank and cold, and I pressed it. I badged my reader against the panel because my badge was the thing the building wanted, the thing that would make it go, and the doors closed and the car descended. I'll tell you what it was like because the descent is the part I can actually describe. The car went down past lobby, and I felt it in my ears, the pressure, the way you do going down a deep grade, deeper than any single floor. The indicator above the door flickered through that blocky symbol. The lights dimmed to a brownish low glow. The HVAC hum changed to something lower, and under it I started to hear, through the vents or through the shaft, a sound like a lot of paper moving. The dry rustle and shuffle of pages being turned and filed, thousands of them, and under that, faintly, the sound of people working, not screaming, working. The low murmur of a room full of clerks at their stations. The click and shuffle of a back office. The most ordinary sound in the world, coming up from a place that burned 40 years ago. And the smell came into the car, wet concrete and old paper, and under it the sharp ghost of smoke, of burned paper, of a fire long cold. The car stopped. The pressure settled. The doors opened. And it was a hallway. A long concrete corridor, low-ceilinged, lit by that same brownish emergency glow, lined with steel shelving and filing systems stretching off into a dark that the light didn't reach. And the floor was gritty with old concrete dust, and the air was cold and close and full of that paper sound. And down the hall at workstations, at desks that belonged to a building that didn't exist, there were people, sitting, working, processing, quiet figures, light, doing the endless back office work of filing and storing. And I knew, the way you know in those moments, that some of them were the clerks who'd burned down there, and some of them were newer. Some of them I recognized. Petrie was at a desk halfway down in the brownish light, head down, working, filing, present, counted, and he didn't look up. And there was an empty desk near the front with a nameplate on it, and I didn't have to read it to know it was mine, the way the directory had already known, the contact for lower tenant storage, B1, a workstation waiting for me to come sit down and start processing and become a permanent quiet entry in the system that runs under that building. I did not get out of the elevator. That was the whole thing. In the end, the simplest thing. The building wanted me to step out and take my desk, the way it had gotten Petrie to step out, the way it would have gotten the young woman, lured by the routine, the familiar back office calm of it, the relief of just sitting down and doing the work and being counted and not having to fight anymore. And God help me, it was tempting in a way I don't like to admit, because I was tired, the kind of tired where a quiet desk in the dark where someone counts you present forever doesn't sound like the worst thing. That's the real horror of it. It didn't grab anybody, it offered. It offered the thing overworked, overlooked, replaceable. People are always being told to want, which is to be a reliable entry in the system, present and filed and not making problems. Petrie had stepped out because stepping out was just one more late night, one more deadline, one more staying because you're afraid not to. I stayed in the car, I held the door open button, and I called down the hall. I called Petrie's name, I called the others, and I told them they could come back, that their shift was over, that nobody was counting their hours down here, that the fire was 40 years cold, and they didn't have to keep filing. A couple of them looked up. Petrie looked up slow, like a man hearing his name from very far away, but none of them got up. They'd been counted present too long. They didn't know how to be anything but inventory anymore. That's what the building does to you. By the time it offers you the desk, you've already forgotten you were ever anything else. So I took my hand off the door button and I pressed L, and the doors closed on that brownish hallway, and the paper sound and Petrie's slow lifted face, and the car rose, and the pressure changed in my ears, and the indicator came up through the flickering symbol to L, and the doors opened on the clean new lobby with its glowing directory screen. And I walked out and I badged through the gates and I left, and I did not come back. I quit the next day. Told Ms. Reyes I'd found other work, which was a lie, and she was relieved, I think, to have a quiet exit instead of a problem. The young woman from insurance, I did one thing for her, the only thing I could. I waited for her in the lobby my last morning, and I told her, plainly, like a crazy person, that she needed to stop staying late, that she needed to leave when the rest of her team left every day, no matter what, that the building was not safe for people who stayed alone after midnight. She looked at me like I was exactly the kind of burned-out night shift weirdo you'd expect to say that. But I checked the public tenant listings a while later, the way you can sometimes find people, and she'd left that company, moved on, somewhere new. So maybe she heard me. I hope she heard me. Here's why I'm finally telling it. The directory screen my last morning still had the listing, lower tenant storage B1, my name in the contact field. I never got it removed. I don't think it can be removed. And a few months ago, I got a notification on my phone, on the tenant app I'd never deleted, the building's app, that still had me in its system, that still counts me somewhere as present. It was a calendar notification, the cheerful corporate kind. It said I had a meeting scheduled, location B1. And no matter how many times I delete the app, it reinstalls the way the button always came back. And the notification comes again, every so often, a meeting on B1, and I don't go. I'm 100 miles from that building, and I will never go. But I looked the developer up. The company that built that tower, they build a lot of towers all over the Sun Belt, fast on cheap land that used to be other things, land with old buried structures they pour foundations over to save the cost of digging them out. I think about Hollis saying the system never got shut off. And I think about how many of those clean, new glass towers have a building engineer working alone at 3 a.m, watching the after-hours logs, accounting for who's still inside. And I wonder how many of them have noticed in one of the elevators below the lobby button, a new button that appeared one Friday, blank, cold, waiting for a badge. Because I've started to believe it isn't one building. I think it's a thing the developer carries from site to site without knowing, a way of building that wakes up whatever's buried and teaches the new system the old system's job, which is to store what corporate life throws away. The late workers, the back office clerks, the replaceable, the ones a company keeps counting as present, long after they're gone. And somewhere right now there's a tired man on the overnight, paying down some debt, keeping his head down, telling himself the button's just a wrong panel, that he'll call it in Monday. I hope he doesn't write it down. But if he does, I hope he keeps his hand off the desk and rides back up and runs. That's all you can do. You can't shut it off. You can't dig them out. You can only refuse to sit down.